Good morning, good afternoon, or as the case may be, good evening, and welcome to Distribution Strategy Group's Best Practice Studies, State of Customer Experience in Distribution. We're going to be talking about some recent trends that we're seeing in our benchmark data from over 50 distributors who are measuring and improving their customer experience. We'll hear some exciting things on really the how-tos and really what some of the results are in terms of improving customer experience and overall customer satisfaction. First, I want to cover some background from our sponsors, starting with Distribution Strategy Group's own software suites. Actually, I want to shift to the Profit and Productivity Summit. We have a conference coming up in November in Chicago, the Profit and Productivity Summit. And a lot of what we're going to be focusing on are traditional ways of growing profit, but also productivity, where you're able to pick up additional labor savings or some type of productivity benefit. Some of our speakers at this point include John Wyborg from Stellar Industrial, Alex Chizovsky, Director of Analytics and Consulting at Bundy Group, Janet Zelenka, former CFO and CIO at Stericycle and Ascendant. More coming soon. This promises to be an absolutely great session. We encourage you to scan the QR code or go to the website and register. From Distribution Strategy Group, we actually have three products in our software suite, Distributor RX software suite. The first is Customer Experience RX, providing actionable feedback to identify performance gaps and improvement areas in the customer experience and customer satisfaction. Second product in our suite is Employee Experience RX, kind of a counterpart to the customer, and gaining employee feedback to ensure your culture attracts and retains top talent. And finally, Demand RX, providing estimated sales potential by product line and account to uncover opportunities. I'd like to welcome Mike Dennenberg from Canals. Mike, thank you for sponsoring our session today.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. I'm Mike Dennenberg with Canals. We are AI native software built to automate distribution workflows ranging from sales order entry to accounts payable to purchasing and receiving. Here on screen are just some of the over 70 distributors we work with, spanning electrical, plumbing, HVAC, building materials, and more. Can go ahead to the next slide, Jonathan. When it comes to customer experience, it's all about meeting your customers where they're at, and that's still largely via email and in all varieties of formats, from a nice PDF with part numbers, dates, and other information clearly outlined to a list of materials with slang, typos, and abbreviations, or better yet, a picture of items written on a 2x4. All of that requires a human from your team to pull up the ERP and key information in. That takes time, which in turn delays you getting back to your customers. With Canals, that's no longer the case. Our AI can read any format, understand the parts, quantities, and other details, and create a quote or order directly in your ERP in a matter of minutes. So, what's the significance of that? It's certainly a meaningful productivity gain, but perhaps more importantly, it helps you better serve your customers and enhance their experience working with you. Faster response times, more accurate orders, and more time for your team to provide value-added customer service. All of which, as we'll see in today's webinar, can help drive sales growth. If you'd like to learn more about how other distributors are using Canals and whether it might be a fit for your business, I'd love to chat and show you a demo. My contact info is up here on screen, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Mike. We'd like to welcome Sandy Leon from Epicor.
Hey, thanks so much. We're happy to be a sponsor today. Next slide. Here at Epicor, we've been in the distribution industry for over 50 years. Our ERPs, Profit 21 and Eclipse, were developed over those years with direct input and direction from distributors. Does that matter? Yes, it absolutely does. We know your world, we understand your challenges, and our solutions are going to help you solve them. In fact, when we ask new customers why they chose Epicor, the thing that we hear most often is that we get them, and our software is the best fit for what they do right out of the box. The other thing that we're really proud of is our customer retention rate. It's an unheard of 90%. That's not by chance. We work hard at that. And we also work hard at helping you to have those kinds of relationships with your customers. Next page. Today, we're going to hear the results from DSG's State of Customer Experience Research. This is no secret. Your customers expect a lot more from you today than they did 10 years ago, especially when it comes to online technology. Our Profit 21 ERP has integrated tools that are going to enable you to quickly and efficiently manage your prospect and customer information from opportunity to quote to order. Plus, your data is housed within Profit 21 CRM, which can be mined for insights that allow you to have automated marketing and sales processes and forecast future sales. As you listen to this webinar and think about your technology plans for the coming year, think about Epicor. If you're in the market for new tools to support your growth, we'd love to talk. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandy. I'd like to welcome Jeremy from HawkSearch.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everybody. Jeremy Leduc with HawkSearch. We are a third-party search, so think about your website or your shopping cart, your e-commerce, and whether the native search that you're using today works for you or not, and we step in and help with that. So we've been doing this for 15 years. We've got over 350 customers. 70% of them are manufacturers and distributors. And actually, the newest Gartner Magic Quadrant for search and product discovery just named us the #1 search tool for B2B. So search is obviously very important. We cover the basics, of what was kind of yesterday's search, which is still very important, which is relevance and unit of measure and really complex catalogs with lots of attributes. But of course, today, everything's really exciting with AI tools, and we have gone very deep with AI, and we've got some super exciting things. If you go to the next slide, we are the new things we're doing is really covering what people expect from a search bar today, right? People are typing in questions, concepts, they want to upload images and all this stuff. And so the search themselves, the search queries have gotten really complex. A great example here is, just the first one where you have the material and the product type and the environment and some specs in there. And we've got to break that down. And we're using AI pretty heavily to do that. If you could go to the next slide. So we do that through Hawk AI, through what we call Smart Search and Smart Response. So we're leveraging large language models, Gen AI, to do a lot of guided selling. We're able to actually get the search result back and describe things, summarize things, start conversations. And we're able to use what's called vector databases and LLMs to do the front-end search themselves, the concept-based search, the image-based search. So our website is actually hawksearch.com, and just hit hawksearch.com, and happy to chat.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I'd like to welcome Randy from Smith Commerce.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I'm Randy Cole, SVP of Marketing at Smith, and we're home to the performance commerce people. Next. What does that mean exactly? Well, at Smith, we believe that every aspect of commerce can be measured and improved upon to create a cycle of continuous improvement. We believe that commerce is much more than just a buy button or a checkout flow, and that it impacts every aspect and every stage of the customer lifecycle. And that is AI-infused tech is everywhere and then growing exponentially, as you've heard in some of our previous comments. It's the human element that really makes the difference between good and great. Next, please. So we take an outcome-focused approach to our service offerings, which do span the customer lifecycle, by creating seamless customer experiences that lower barriers to engagement and lower cost to serve, by enabling tech across the commerce tech stack in getting our clients to achieve the most ROI for the critical tech spend, by creating digital marketing programs that are impactful and actually move the needle, and by helping our clients work smarter by taking the AI already in their tech stack and applying it to their current business. Next, please. So getting to tomorrow often starts with a conversation. I encourage you to reach out for an absolutely no obligation consultation, a CX or digital marketing audit, or tech review. And thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Randy. And actually, for literally all of the sponsors, you have a very direct effect on the customer experience. We'll talk about some of those elements as we go through the presentation here today. I want to start first with what do we mean by customer experience? It sounds like kind of a consultant term. I think of it as a very simple definition. It's every interaction across all the things that you do for your customers and all the places where you touch your customers. So if we look at the capabilities and touch points on this slide here, it includes customer service, inventory, pricing, interaction with your reps. It includes how close they are to you, whether it's a DC or a branch, repairs, kitting and assembly, value-added services. There's potentially a large list of value-added services not shown here. I'm showing things that are common to many distributors. Some of these things are touch points where you're not really providing a capability. Billing is a touch point. You don't really provide something for your customer, but customer service is both a capability and a touch point. So again, it's the totality of all of these things that defines the experience that your customers have with you. Some of these capabilities and touch points are low frequency, high impact. For example, returns management. You hope it's low frequency, and it can have a very significant effect on the customer's experience or overall satisfaction in working with you. Same thing with interaction with credit. Sometimes you get a credit person who's a little bit crusty, and it can be off-putting to your customers in a material way. What we know in distribution is that customer experience is often, in fact, usually the main differentiator for distributors. When I speak at conferences, I ask the audience, how many of you have exclusives with any of your suppliers? And the last 3 conferences I've spoken at, literally 0 distributors have had exclusives with their suppliers, which means that you're not differentiating on product. You're probably selling product that's similar to what your other competitors are selling. The net effect of all of this is that it can drive customer satisfaction, higher customer satisfaction, loyalty, sales, and profits. I should mention, by the way, we will be taking questions. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So I will try to notice it and get to it as quickly as I can. Here's something that I think is generally true about when you get happy customers. First of all, they buy more from you, and they are more loyal. They're going to stay longer. And when you're getting an increase in the customer satisfaction, many people are using Net Promoter Score. We are. That 1-point increase in the Net Promoter Score is likely to improve customer retention by 1/4 to 3/4 of a point. So if you were to get a 10-point increase in Net Promoter Score, you might see a 2.5 to 7.5 increase in customer retention, which is a very material number. When I think about the case for CX, I mentioned a couple of the pieces already, but one is it really does drive revenue growth because happy customers buy more. It provides that differentiation beyond price and product. It really is your product in a sense. If you're in the channel, whether you're in wholesale or in retail, the customer experience is the thing that differentiates you. Another piece is that the expectation from your B2B customer is going up. We're expecting B2C-like experiences both online and offline as well. So this is a really important reason to start to understand what's happening with customer experience and not to take it for granted. It does reduce churn and therefore improves retention. But also getting the right CX, particularly if you're doing something as complex as journey mapping, often enhances operational efficiency as well. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It makes your customers happier, but you get efficiencies as well in the process. And then finally, that good experience, leaving delighted customer's delighted is going to result in more word of mouth and reputation that's amplified. So I want to show you some of the comments that people provide when they're asked, why did you give that rating? So you're asked, the question is, how likely do you recommend distributor XYZ to a colleague or friend? And so you answer that on a numeric scale. And then the next question is, why did you give that rating? So if we look at some of the comments here, they're instructive. The first one says prices for most parts are elevated substantially compared to other supply houses. If a part is available somewhere else, 9 out of 10 times, I will go to the other supply house as I'm not being price gouged nearly as heavily. So again, if this customer's not having a good experience, they're telling you 9 out of 10 times they're going to go somewhere else. Able to help with automation equipment when I needed it, have not seen or heard from a salesman in many years. This might be a mid-sized customer or a small customer who, for whatever reason, is feeling like they should be hearing from a salesperson, but are not. Friendly service, but the follow-up is lacking. So the big takeaway is you guys are nice, but the ultimate performance of what you're doing is not that great. There's only one person over there that is pleasant to deal with. Wow. So that's pretty condemnatory. You think they're getting the next order? Maybe not so much. Another one, no value added. So you might think, well, our job is to get you the right product in the right time and the right place. You have to go beyond that. You have to be adding value. It might be in the form of expertise or something else. And this customer says, willing to pay a bit more for a great supply house, but I might as well purchase based on price if there's no value added. That's a really insightful and thoughtful comment from that respondent. We'll just look at a couple more here. Not enough stock or the right items at the locations we visit. Customers routinely complain about inventory availability. In fact, inventory availability is generally rated low. When we look at it, we're looking to see, is it unusually low? Because we know that people are going to complain about it. But this person is pointing it out that it's a general problem. Lack of a timely response when asking for quotes, quote clarifications, and support with license purchasing. So the piece that Canals described of helping turn around quotes more quickly is something that would affect the customer experience, and probably even the win rate as well in dealing with this particular customer. Another comment, fairly slow to get quotes back, never have enough material in stock. So we have gobs of this kind of data. This most recent benchmark, we've got over 27,000 respondents. I just want to add another piece in the case for customer experience. In a broader analysis, it's shown that the companies that are leading in customer experience are way outperforming the market. The CX leaders are at 307% above the market versus the CX laggards are at 90% of the market. So again, this really is your product, and taking it seriously in a more competitive environment is a meaningful thing. When we look at the maturity of customer experience, there's a couple different levels of understanding of customer experience. There's some distributors who don't know what customer experience is. You mentioned the term and you see a blank stare from them. There are others who know what it is, who will even acknowledge that, yeah, the customer experience is our product, but they're doing nothing to measure or improve the customer experience that they're delivering to their customer. They think they're good where they are. I get it that it's my product. My product is good. I don't need to do anything to measure or improve that. A next level of maturity is measuring the satisfaction, and it could be with Net Promoter Score, or it could be with customer effort score, overall customer satisfaction, likelihood to purchase again. So they're measuring the satisfaction. The highest level is really where it's become a continuous improvement process, where the distributor is measuring the satisfaction, where they're looking at specific causes of dissatisfaction, getting to a root cause where possible, and taking action in a continuous improvement process. The folks who are most invested in this are looking at how to get the data, how to get the information they need to make these decisions. They're looking at it as an initiative. So there's often a title with somebody that has customer experience in their title, and they're driving this potentially in a cross-function role. I want to talk for just a moment about churn and retention, because this is a really important thing, and it has a very different flavor in B2B than it has in B2C. I want to show you what it looks like in B2C for Verizon. So Verizon has probably 80 million subscribers, and they're literally reporting quarterly churn in their quarterly report and in their annual report. You see that line here across the bottom. They're looking at how do they shave off 1/10 of a point of churn each quarter, and that would be a really significant thing for them. The way Verizon and other subscription-based companies, Xfinity, Time Warner, Netflix, the way these companies manage it is they'll literally use AI to estimate all of their 80 million subscribers' likelihood of churn, and so from 1 to 80 million, and then they'll take the top 2 or 3% most likely to churn, and they'll figure out what's driving that churn, and they'll make some intervention based on that profile. So for some people, they might be having low quality of service, or they might be having dropped calls. For other people, they might be using it less, and what they're going to do is provide some value, additional value to the customer. It might be giving more value for the same price, or accelerating the time in which they get a new phone. But the thing about churn in B2C is that it's really immediate. If you look at this lower part of the graph here, as soon as you stop buying from Netflix or from Time Warner, your subscription stops that day. It doesn't wind down. But I think about your own B2B customers is that, yeah, last year we were a primary supplier for them, and then this year we became a secondary supplier, and then next year we become a tertiary supplier, and then eventually it goes to zero. It has that more gradual, incremental flavor. And by the way, the same thing on the way up. I mean, your customers don't typically go to peak revenue in 1 month. They build up over time as they shift their buying from another supplier over to you. The other thing that's significant about B2B churn is that the difference between your biggest customers and your smallest customers is way, way, way bigger than the difference in B2C. In B2C, your biggest customer might be 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times your smallest customer. In B2B, it could be 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 times your smallest customer. So noticing what's happening with different tiers of customers is important in managing churn, and also in figuring out how you want the customer experience to be. When we look at those different tiers, those large customers, typically your top 10%, you want to be less than 3%, maybe even less than 2% churn per year. Whereas your next 10% of customers, it would be acceptable to have maybe an 8 to 12% churn rate. And then for the other smaller customers, your bottom 80%, you might see as high as 30% churn per year, and that might be okay because of the revenue that's associated with that. When we look at churn and distribution, what we're noticing is how has the pattern of purchase changed, if at all, either the frequency or the regularity. We're looking at how many SKUs or product lines or product groups are they purchasing? What's the order size? As these metrics start to change at a customer level, then we can notice more likelihood of churn. Other factors that would signal possibility of churn, increase in returns. Perhaps the champion at your customer has left if there are credit issues, or on your side, if you change the account manager. All these things indicate that there may be churn. So let's talk about how to measure and improve customer sat. I'm going to abbreviate that as CSAT, and customer experience. I'm going to abbreviate that as CX in the B2B world. When we look at measuring and improving CSAT and CX, customer satisfaction and customer experience, we look at three aspects of it. First is measuring the overall satisfaction. I've mentioned a couple of different ways that it gets measured. We're going to look in more detail at Net Promoter Score. But the next piece is looking at what's driving that overall satisfaction. So if I liken this to going to the doctor, I know I've got high blood pressure, but what's driving my high blood pressure? Oh, okay. What's driving my high blood pressure is I got too much salt in my diet. I've got a congenital predisposition to high blood pressure, and I don't exercise at all. So that would be what's driving that. And in the case of distribution, it might be lack of inventory in a given location, or it might be some aspect of customer service that is a driver of overall satisfaction. And then what are the specific actions that need to be done to improve the customer experience and overall satisfaction? The goal is to be as specific as possible about any of the actions to improve customer experience and overall sat. Simple reason, there's a lot of different possible drivers of overall satisfaction. If you were to apply them across your company, there might be prohibitive costs with doing them across your company. But if you can isolate it to here's a location or here's a function that needs to be improved, then it becomes a more manageable incremental process of change. When we think about the kind of surveys that we're doing, these are more moderate length surveys. These are Goldilocks length, not too long, not too short. There is that first question, how likely are you to recommend XYZ distribution to a colleague or friend on a scale of 0 to 10. There is looking at how satisfied the customer is with your capabilities, but also how important they are. Because part of what we want to get focused on is something that's really high importance that's lower satisfaction. We'll typically go deep on a couple of capabilities or touch points. We might ask 6 or 7 questions about customer service or 6 or 7 questions about the experience on the website. And then we're going to also want to know things about the respondent if we don't already have that in the survey, and there may be some other custom questions. Closing with a broad question, how can we be a better supplier to you? How can we earn more of your business? How can we be a better partner to you? So these are, again, moderate length surveys that typically will get about a 90% completion rate. The Net Promoter Score as a measurement of overall satisfaction, again, like measuring your blood pressure, has become a de facto standard. About 2/3 of the Fortune 500 are using Net Promoter Score. And I think in fairness, there are pros and cons of any of the overall measurements of customer satisfaction. That's a different discussion for a different time. We like Net Promoter Score in part because it is almost a standard and because it's easy to understand. It's a very simple measurement of Net Promoter Score, which is when you ask on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend our business to a friend or colleague? The people who answer 9 or 10 are considered a promoter, hence the term Net Promoter Score. You are more likely to say positive things, maybe even proactively to your friend or colleague if you are a 9 or a 10. The people who answer 7 or 8 are considered passives. You might think 7 or 8 is good, but there actually is some ambivalence about you there. And there's even a good chance to convert some of these passives to be promoters. The people who answer below 7, the people who answer 0 to 6 are considered detractors. So the score itself is measured as the percentage of promoters. In this example, 68% minus 8% times 100. That gives a 60 net promoter score. Is this a good, bad, or indifferent score? Well, I'll tell you, this is a very good score. Shown in the lower left, 0 to 30. Above 30 is considered a good net promoter score. Above 50 is very good. Above 70 is excellent. For example, Amazon is a 75. So this is a very, very healthy NPS score. A lot of distributors would be very happy to get this as a score. I want to talk a little bit about our benchmark. So we have, in our most recent benchmark from Q3, we have about 27,000 respondents. That entire benchmark has moved from a 49 in the first quarter to a 50 in the third quarter. Now, that might not sound like a very significant improvement, but it's literally only another 4,000 respondents. And so probably if we look just at the third quarter alone, the net promoter score of the people who took the surveys in the third quarter might have been a 53 or 54. So it's actually quite a significant improvement over the prior benchmark in Q1. What's driving the increase? Well, we're getting distributors who are doing a second or a third survey who are implementing the specific actions and recommendations that we've made in prior surveys. And a lot of those focus on different aspects of customer service, including quote turnaround, wait time, expertise, as well as inventory availability, typically in a specific location. We've also brought on a few new distributors who are scoring higher to begin with. But just as an example, in this most recent period, we saw a distributor go from 44 NPS to 55, one from 24 to 30, one from 45 to 51, one from 44 to 52. So these are very significant improvements that's driving that lift in the overall net promoter score. If we start to look at the end customer of these surveys, we've broken it down by a handful of industries here. These are broad. So we've got construction, we've got distribution, where distributors are buying from other distributors. In some cases, that is intentional, where the one distributor is reselling to the other. In other cases, it's just the distributor's buying from you because they're out of a product and they need it. We've got institutional customers, which would include hospitals and schools, some government. We've got industrial or manufacturing customers, retail, and services. Among these customers, interestingly, the distributors are the most satisfied. Perhaps there's sympathy for who they're buying from. But then construction has a 51 net promoter score compared to institutional at 49, manufacturing 48, retail at 47. The thing I would tell you is I'm sharing benchmark data. A really important question is, what do the sectors look like in your customer base? I can guarantee you that your individual mileage will vary from the benchmark, and that's more important than what's happening with this overall benchmark data. Here's some mistakes that we see in how people use net promoter score. One is they will survey, let's say, once a month for everybody that did a transaction in the last month who hasn't done a survey in the last 3 months. So we would call this a trigger or transactional NPS. This will tend to radically oversample from your most frequently buying customers, which means your biggest, which means your happiest customers. What we see we call this pulse NPS. What we see from these customers are typically a 20-point increase over sending a periodic survey once or twice a year to your entire customer base. It doesn't mean that there's not value in doing this, but you need to understand you're more likely to give yourselves high fives and pats on the back for doing this pulse or trigger NPS. Another piece that we see is where sales reps will send the survey out rather than having it come from marketing. And when the reps choose who they're sending it out to, guess what happens? They're sending it to their best friend forever. They're sending it to their BFF. We also will see that inflation of the NPS. Again, it doesn't mean that there's not information or that there's not signal in what you're hearing when the reps send it out. But I think it's really important to send it from a central source to send it to the entire list as well. Another piece is that, and this is a bit of a drawback with Net Promoter Score, is that because the passives are not included, you could have one company that has 55% promoters and 30% detractors. And they would end up with a 25 NPS. But then you've got another customer that's got 25% promoters, no detractors, and that's the same NPS. So sometimes you have to look a little bit closer to understand how the passives factor into what you're looking at. In the why did you give that rating, one of the things that we notice is that often you're getting only one or two pieces of data for why did you give that rating. So for example, we're looking at responses from promoters here, and this first response is a very large selection for finished needs. Quick, friendly, low pressure customer service. Again, one piece of data. But sometimes you get a couple pieces of data. In the best case, you might get information on, I like my rep and they get me what I need. That's two pieces of data. So one of the drawbacks with relying just on this information is that you're not getting enough data to really diagnose what's driving the Net Promoter Score. I'm going to show a little bit more about text analysis. We use what's known as sentiment analysis to classify the sentiment of a quote roughly into happy face or very happy face, neutral face, sad face, very sad face. So here we're looking at a number of happy face comments. Our area sales guy is very friendly and knowledgeable. Our inside sales contact and sales rep are very attentive and responsive. We're getting a couple of different pieces of data there. We can see that the sentiment around service, the word service when it's used, is very positive. A lot of green here. But when we get to availability, it's not much dark green, and there's more dissatisfaction here. So we can also look at what's happening with text. The limitations of using only open-ended feedback is that, first of all, not everybody who gives that answer to the first question, likely to recommend, is going to provide open-ended feedback. As I hope you've seen now, that the answers are often minimal. They're very terse. And when they say, hey, I like Brian in my Charlotte branch, or I like Brianna in my Charlotte branch, that's not really very actionable. I can't really do anything to improve. It's, using atta-girl or atta-boy comments. So there is definitely value in the open-ended feedback, but we can't rely on that alone. I want to say a thing about surveys as a mechanism for getting data. First is that whenever you do a survey, there is an inherent bias in the survey. Every survey source has bias, whether it's phone, whether it's sent by print mail, whether it's electronic, whether it's using that pulse or trigger based survey. These all have bias. The key is to make sure that you know what is the bias. 10 years ago, if I'd done an electronic survey, I would conclude that it is slightly biased towards slightly younger respondents and customers. I think that bias is pretty much washed out at this point. People with my hair color and quantity do take surveys these days in a way that we didn't 10 or 12 years ago. But I think another piece to know about surveys is that you might be thinking, man, I hate getting surveys. When I fly into my airport, I get a survey from the airline the next day, and I get a survey every time I fly. One of the things that we've noticed is that your B2B customers are much, much more willing to take a survey from you than they are to take it from a B2C thing that's very impersonal. you might have a few thousand or a few tens of thousands of customers, whereas United Airlines has 100 million customers or 200 million. I don't even know how many. And so there is a more personal relationship. There is greater mutual relationship between your customers and you than there is between United Airlines and their customer. Okay, so let's look at how we quantify the drivers of overall satisfaction. One of the things that we want to find out is how satisfied is your end customer with you on particular capabilities. So that in our benchmark data of 27,000 respondents, that's shown here on the horizontal axis. We can see that they're most satisfied with sales reps, customer service, and technical expertise. Again, this is aggregate data. Your data may look different from this, probably will look different from this. The things that are most important, that's this vertical axis, are inventory availability, customer service, and competitive price. Your sales reps might be surprised that price is the third most important thing because they're living in the market day to day. But this data, we consistently get that competitive price is the third most important thing to your customers rather than first or second. We usually see it third or fourth. I've seen it first in having done probably 500 surveys once or twice. I saw it eighth once. That was pretty surprising. But this is usually where it comes out. Also, what you'll notice is that if I were to draw a line through these capabilities here, I could roughly draw a line through all of these, meaning that the importance and the satisfaction are somewhat correlated. But for competitive price and inventory availability, they're not very correlated. They really fall off of that correlation line. We expect your customers to use surveys to complain about price. We expect your customers to use surveys to complain about inventory availability. When we see either of those as unusually low, and we use benchmark data to do that, then we will make a note of it. But if we see inventory availability right about where it is, that's kind of what we expect. Another comment is that the easy-to-use website is both lower importance and lower satisfaction. A number of our customers have been surprised, particularly if they've been investing in e-commerce in the last 5 years. They've had a PIM initiative. They're doing, journey mapping. They're doing something to make that UX better on the website. Essentially, what's happened is a lot of distributors now have websites, whereas 5 years ago or 8 years ago, having a website would be differentiating. Anymore, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, it is table stakes. You get penalized for not having a good enough website, but you don't particularly get kudos for having that good enough website. You have to have an outstanding website for your customers to express great satisfaction with that. A final thought on all of this is that, as I mentioned before, what you want to focus on all has cost impact. It could be soft costs. You may not actually be spending money, but if you have to increase inventory availability across your entire company, that would be expensive. Part of what we want to do is say, how do we get focused on what needs to happen and where does it need to happen? And so looking at what's higher importance, lower satisfaction, but perhaps in a particular segment is going to be key to this. One thing I want to say about operating metrics versus customer experience metrics, operating metrics are essential. They help you manage processes, people, and see certain trends, but they are not measurements of customer satisfaction or competitiveness. For example, on-time shipping does not equal met customer needs or means that you're necessarily competitive. Faster will call turnaround does not necessarily mean that your customer is happy or that you're competitive on that. So part of what you need to do is get that voice of the customer. The grade that they give you is more important than the grade you give yourself. Let's take a look now at a couple of segments of data. So before I was showing you the overall heat map for the 27,000 respondents, here we're looking at construction customers versus industrial or manufacturing customers. So mind you that the distributors in our benchmark are from on the construction side or the industrial side, or they're in Jansan or they're in healthcare. But this is looking at the end customer. And what we notice about the end customer here for construction is they have an even bigger emphasis than usual on inventory and customer service. In the construction world, a lot of this is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, as well as building materials. There's this emphasis on, I need it now, I need to do a repair. Whereas the manufacturing has more of a lead time, whether it is OEM or MRO. On the construction side, it's by far the highest emphasis on industries on the branch experience, meaning will call and counter service. When we look at the will call and counter assistance in the manufacturing scenario, it's almost non-existent. It's almost irrelevant. And same as proximity, because a lot of what's happening is product is being delivered. In construction, the customers are more price sensitive than in industrial MRO. We might, if we had more on the, if we had more distributors that were selling to OEMs, we might see more on the price sensitivity. But it's definitely an issue for the construction customers. I think what's important here again is that you can start to understand the requirements of a given customer base or location by looking at what's important to them. And here we have two different profiles in what's important. If we looked at retail or institutional, we would also see different profiles. Another way of looking at the data is by looking at who the persona of your respondent or customer is. When we ask about the job function, we might put up 10 or 15 different job functions, but ultimately what we're looking for is it somebody who's on the purchasing, procurement, finance side of the house? Is it somebody who is in some ways using the product or estimating? Is it senior management? And that has a different meaning in a industrial setting versus a construction setting. Senior management in a construction setting means ownership typically. Senior management in a industrial setting may or may not mean ownership. What we notice here is that the two biggest functions here, finance and operations, are about equally happy. But one of the things that we have noticed across industries, meaning the industry of our distributor and the industry of the customer, is that senior management tends to grade very hard on a lot of things. So actually, this is a misnomer here. This heat map is for senior management rather than finance. And the one thing that we notice about senior management is that they generally place higher importance and rate lower satisfaction on almost every capability. The operations and the finance people were a little bit more similar. There's that focus on importance of inventory availability, customer service, competitive price. The operations customers are very happy relative to their experience with the sales reps. They also tend to place a greater experience on the branch experience and proximity than that senior management does. Once again, individual mileage may vary. You may find that you are delighting your one persona. You might find you're delighting finance, or you might find that you're disappointing operations. That's really key. Yet another dimension, and really the final dimension we're going to look at, is this customer experience based on the size of the customer. What we notice in looking at the benchmark data is that the larger customers have a 55 NPS, the medium customers have a 52, the smaller customers have a 50. That relationship of the larger being happier than the medium being happier than the smaller is what we expect to see. It's kind of textbook. But there are some cases where we see variation. Often we'll see that the difference is more pronounced. So large is a 55, medium's a 50, small is a 42. So the gaps between these are bigger. Or sometimes we might notice that the larger customers are not as happy as the medium or small customers. I remember at least one readout from one of our customers where they went out with a hair on fire when they found that their larger customers weren't as happy as their smaller customers. In some cases, you might say, hey, our business is really optimized for that mid-sized customer. We're okay if the mid-sized customer is approximately as happy as our largest customer. But it's good information to know. You might also say, we're not that focused on our small customers. I'm okay with a lower score with the small customers. Here's the heat maps of importance and satisfaction for the large and the small customers. Not surprisingly, for the large customers, there's both greater reliance and happiness with their sales reps. They're getting more attention, more love, more service from the sales reps. This data is showing that there's less need for technical expertise from the distributor. And there's also less emphasis on the branch experience and how close they are to the distributor. Small customers, you'll notice there's a lot here in that upper left quadrant. They're generally less happy. Often they're not getting as good a price because of volume. I think we expect that. But also there's frequently preferential treatment that larger customers are getting in inventory. So these smaller customers are less happy. As mentioned on the prior slide, that may be an okay outcome depending on how you're focused in your business. Also, the smaller customers tend to have more emphasis on the branch experience, but lower satisfaction. So most of what I've shown you has a very quantitative flavor. There are some cases where looking at that heat map tells you all you need to know, but other times a picture is worth with inflation 2,000 words. And one of the things that we noticed for a customer that we had was that when we looked at their NPS on a map, the detractors are the red dots on the map, the passes are the yellow, and the greens are the promoters. We noticed that this area in Fort Wayne just had a little bit too much blood red detractors in it. When we looked at a map and we also looked at their satisfaction with delivery, we realized that was the main issue for the customers in Fort Wayne. So along with the quantitative view, along with the textual stuff, we will take a look at a geographic view because sometimes it just jumps out. And also, you can even see things here where there's maybe not enough quantitative data to scratch my quantitative itch, but you can still start to see that the data is telling a story that we need to get delivery improved to get the overall NPS of Fort Wayne up to where it needs to be. Another view is going to the individual detailed response, and I'm just showing a fraction of this respondent's detailed response. They gave an 8 on their likelihood to recommend. They said they have a wide variety of product. Panel selection is better than most plywood distributors, but prices are usually a little higher. Overall, this respondent is moderately satisfied. I would say ambivalent. Though they're happy with inventory and branch experience, this customer rates the distributor as average on sales reps, customer service, and expertise. We see that over here. So that's suggesting that you're just kind of a me too on some of the things that are most important to distributors. So sometimes going down to the individual level is helpful in doing this. Here's an example of some actionable insights. And they might actually be a little bit more detailed than what's shown here, but this is directionally what we'd be sharing. Improve inventory availability in the Rochester, Minnesota branch. Increase on time in full for the Fort Wayne branch. Decrease wait time for will call and counter service in the Akron branch. Need to get that real-time link between your website or inventory accurate. It's frustrating customers when they look online and see that what's advertised on the website is not what's actually there. It frustrates them when they place an order and then it turns out that it's a back order. Need to improve quote turnaround time from the Toledo branch. So these are the kinds of things where, again, we're trying to be as specific as possible, but no more specific than necessary in recommending insights that will incrementally improve customer experience. So I hope what you've been able to see today is that CX is really a critical thing for a distributor. If you are a distributor who understands that CX is the main differentiator for you, maybe ask yourself what you need to be doing in the next year to start to work on your product. It is your product. What do you need to do to work on your product? The operating metrics alone are not sufficient. They are helpful, and you have to have them to run your business. But you really need to understand what is the overall satisfaction, what's driving satisfaction, what do we need to do to cure that? Your customers will take a mid-length periodic survey once or twice a year, and that provides that overall measurement of satisfaction. It will help you get to the drivers of satisfaction and then also action-oriented specific insights about what needs to be addressed and where. Proper focus on your product, on your customer experience can lift that net promoter score 5 to 10 points or 10 to 15% in 9 to 15 months. Okay, I want to share a little bit about upcoming events here. We've got the State of Distributor Sales coming up a week from today. Best practices to compete in a changing market with Brian Gardner. Same time, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern. Be sure to register for that. Brian Gardner, founder of Sales Process 360. And then on August 13th, 2 weeks from today, creating clean and accurate product and customer data. This is, by the way, will have a large effect on the customer experience. People can't find what's going on with the search engine because the product data is bad. It's going to frustrate them and they'll go to another site. That's going to be sponsored by HawkSearch and Cavio, and we'll have panelists from both of those companies. Thank you for your time today and wishing you, let's see, do I have a question? So we have one question. We seem to have only have customers with a subpar experience fill out the NPS. The customers that have a positive experience seem not bothered to answer the NPS, excuse the score. Well, I would ask a couple of things or suggest a couple of things. First of all, if the NPS is positive, that means you're getting people with who are promoters who are answering the survey. The second thing is what we usually see is that it's the passives that are underrepresented. You tend to get more response from positive and for negative. I'd be happy to follow up with you further to discuss this because I think it's important. Another question is what percentage of responses do you consider ideal for NPS? We typically look, depending on the size of your list, at 3 to 7% of your list from across an initial email and up to 2 reminders. If it's a smaller list, it might be a higher number, like 7 or 8 or 10. I think we had a smaller list where we had like 12% recently. If it's a large list, it might be closer to 3% or even less. So happy to talk with you further about that. Okay, thank you everybody for attending, and thank you, Eric, for saying it's good stuff. We'll talk to you all in a future episode.